right, good evening, everyone. My name is Vajaah Parker. I am from WDG. We are a digital design agency based in Washington, D.C. That's me over there in the corner. I run WDG with Abs. Hi, Ab. It's good to have you here. And we have the opportunity of working with different organizations across different verticals to implement Gutenberg and WordPress. And so what I'm trying to bring is some of our takeaways on trying to roll out Gutenberg for associations, for higher educations, for different municipalities, for world powers. We've had a lot of takeaways. I have the pleasure of living across the river in Jersey City, so it's really good to see you guys tonight. And journeying with Gutenberg has been a very interesting journey for us. First, it was the concept of being an early adopter. How many clients would be coming towards us and saying, not only are we excited about WordPress, WordPress at scale, WordPress performance, and being able to leverage WordPress to manage our content, but we are also trying to use what's latest with WordPress. We're trying to adopt Gutenberg within our content teams. We're trying to leverage it. So we had to understand who was really ready to go ahead and do what we just learned is necessary, transform your internal team to be able to leverage a new tool for your organization in order to accomplish your goals. And so getting from an early adopter to Gutenberg becoming an accelerator has been our journey so far. And so we've got to build out Gutenberg for teams like Barnes & Noble with their blogs and integrating the ability to check out books from your reading experience to clients like the New York Federal Reserve, where they're going for a different set of security and rules. We've worked with associations like the National Leagues of Cities that required an entire internal stakeholder conversation to move the content strategy of the organization forward in order to take advantage of the new CMS. And so, what I walked away with is sometimes our Gutenberg implementations were too hot, sometimes they were too cold, sometimes they were just right. This is Afrotina and the Three Bears. You might have been reading Goldilocks and the Three Bears, but I grew up reading Afrotina and the Three Bears. And when she goes into the house and she tries different things on, like the chair and the bed or the soup and the porridge, sometimes it's not quite what we intended. And that would be our takeaway from many of our implementations of Gutenberg. You can take Gutenberg right out of the box and you can start using it with your blog if you need to. But if you're trying to use Gutenberg and power an entire experience that has different types of content for different audiences and users, then you're doing a more complex, a more custom, a branded implementation of the framework to build a custom page builder system for a client. And mileage does vary. So we had a lot of lessons to learn along the way. AdvaMed is a medical technology association. They were looking to use WordPress to shift some of their HubSpot campaigns into their primary website infrastructure. So they wanted to build a landing page builder alongside their blog, alongside their evergreen pages, alongside their careers pages, so that everything would work together. So then we understood that we would need a fully branded kit that worked for dynamic content like blogs, but also just as well as a custom branded block kit for content that needed to convert prospective members, for content that needed to convert others on advocacy campaigns. The content needs had to be addressed across the board. When we worked with the Good Food Institute, they were trying to bring forward their campaigns about cultivated meat. There was a lot of science, there was a lot of advocacy, there was a lot of information, and they were establishing their brand. But what we learned by working with GFI was that there is such thing as too much flexibility with Gutenberg. You can definitely unleash a block builder on a team, and then the options are endless, the patterns aren't there, the blocks aren't there, there's too much to do, not enough control to maintain brand consistency. So when we worked with GFI, we learned that we needed to implement patterns and blocks in order to bring everything together. We've been learning lessons from so many of the organizations that we've worked with, but my biggest lesson so far is that it's not really about Gutenberg at all, right? Nobody really wants to talk about how well their content management system works for them to maintain it. They just want to talk about the results that they get when their website is launched and they're able to maintain their publication cadence. And that's really the takeaway for most of our clients. It wasn't about a new CMS. They needed a performant experience for the end user and for their administrative user that was logging into WordPress every day trying to make it work. And so if for our Medical Technology Association, you couldn't log in through your CRM, then it didn't make sense for them to use it. And so it was about the integrations. It was about the end results. It was about the digital transformation. it wasn't really about the content management system. So we had to learn to balance the needs and bring all of that forward. I want to quickly talk to you about a case study from some of our latest Gutenberg work. We've been working with Penn Engineering and their leading brand called PEMNet. And they were leveraging a 20-year-old, 20,000 SKU product database, and this is for different types of fasteners. Yes, they're holding the world together with aerospace and commercial electronic applications. And they brought forward this database because it really is all about the product, and they were positioning it as a B2B organization, and as any B2B organization needs to do, it's about sales, it's about improving customer service, and it's about consolidating website properties so that you can have the right user journey for your B2B marketing and sales teams. And so in order to bring to life a website that was going to serve the needs for a $1 billion B2B company, we had to really focus on what was going to matter, and what we needed to go ahead and start teasing out was what type of content would we use Gutenberg to power? What type of content would we leave in custom post types and templates? What type of content would we source from their external databases? And how would we make it all make sense? A lot of our platforms are more than just one thing. And so B2B work could have to be the product, but it also needed to be news and events. What's going on with the life of the company? What's going on with its position in the industry? It also had to be content that talked about working with the company. How do you have that experience when you come to the table? At the end of the day, they had to attract engineers and convert them. It was as much about the product as it was about the narrative and the storytelling and the credibility. We had to bring all of the content types together and make sense of it. And that's when we started to diversify things. And what Gutenberg really allowed us to do was to build out a full custom block system for those standard evergreen pages, but then we were able to spend tons of time breaking apart this legacy database of 20,000 SKUs. And what ended up being necessary were internal stakeholder conversation with engineers that were broken down into different content models so that we could understand how would we migrate and manage each part of this experience. When we were all said and done, there were 3 things that became really important about positioning Gutenberg in context. I was actually really surprised about how we decided to leverage Gutenberg. I assumed that we were going to be doing a major migration into custom Gutenberg blocks. The technology team said that was not the way. And instead of doing a major migration into custom Gutenberg blocks, we did a major integration with the product database. We did a major integration with a custom post type for that product. And then we left Gutenberg for the marketing and brochure portion of that experience. And those pages needed to be rebuilt anyway because it was a new brand refresh. It was a new experience. They wanted to take their new layouts from the Gutenberg block framework and tell new stories. So there was no point in migrating that content straight in. The point was to train them to leverage it when their custom block system was ready. So the migrations portion of the process was all about the source content in that database because the product database was being structured and restructured by our team. When we could get that source content out of the way, then we could introduce a new flexible framework to Penn Engineering. We went through a full strategy, design, and development process to have individual blocks that would serve for their branded kit so that they could build out their entire experience. And then we rolled out a set of content services to leverage it. I can't suggest enough how important it is to know that once your Gutenberg experience has been designed and implemented, you have to spend the time to train your team to get the best out of it. You have to help your team to think like page builders and not just content entry people that are just copying and pasting into fields. You have to encourage them and empower them with those things. Because there might be a different team at the table building an industry page versus the team that's managing the blog versus the team that's in control of the product database versus the team that's handling the marketing landing pages. All of those teams have to find use in your content management system and be able to leverage it to make it work. And so powering all of this becomes very, very intentional on our end. We run a migration so that we can get all the structured content out of the way so that you can leave the page building for the content entry that you can control. And then B, we focus on what becomes of Gutenberg's. This Flex Framework Kit was designed for Penn Engineering. I know it's hard to see at a glance, but it's a full design kit that was built to improve the user journey and the customer experience. And then instead of taking that kit and, of course, developing it as page layouts, it gets integrated as custom Gutenberg blocks. And then those blocks are enabled on different custom post types throughout the experience. That way, you're able to use the custom blocks instead of the stock Gutenberg blocks in order to bring your brand to life. That allows for content that can communicate expertise, content that can communicate product detail, content that can communicate values and culture, and you can handle it differently when you need to and how you need to leverage it. These are some detail screens from the Gutenberg implementation here for content entry. And that's the joy of using Gutenberg and extending it, is that now you can really build in the options to your experience that matter to the content that you're editing at that time, so that then your options make sense. It matters whether or not you're sourcing latest news from your blog or from your resources or from different types of content. This is the way that we can empower all of us to use Gutenberg uniquely. One of the things that came out of our work with PEM Engineering and all of our Gutenberg work to date is that we've been trying to do what each different organization that we hear about is doing, and that's bringing all of our best practices together into a core build. I think our biggest takeaway is that in order for us to get over the learning curve of being an early adopter to Gutenberg and leveraging it consistently is that we had to package our best practices up. And so internally, to support that, we now built and maintain a wireframe kit that has custom Gutenberg blocks that brings forward the best practices across different associations, verticals, municipalities, B2B and B2C experiences, so that then there's a base. There's a base so that we can try to start getting it right. Because at the end of the day, nobody likes plain porridge. Nobody just needs Gutenberg for the sake of Gutenberg. Like, it either improves the client's ability to update and maintain the content in a way that makes sense, or it doesn't. It has to accomplish the goals that the client brings forth at that time. And when we are really intentional about what we migrate about the flex frameworks that we create and about empowering a team to enter content, then Gutenberg can power an entire experience. You can stop launching different microsites and start launching different frameworks, and you can build a multi-site within. You can share a block kit, and you can roll it out through your organization. And so, a couple of my questions, if you guys don't have any, are where are you on the arc of Gutenberg adoption towards acceleration, and what content needs and teams have been best to leverage Gutenberg with? Hopefully you've learned a bit about some of our lessons and takeaway implementing so far. Thank you.
I will be honest, I think you said, as someone who has been known to harness the flexibility of Gutenberg, AKA go a little bit rogue, I feel a little bit called out in this, but no, this was really great, thank you. Any questions?
Hi, fantastic presentation, by the way. So you mentioned you're a design agency first. How did you go about the responsibilities of design, working with the client, gathering the requirements, and then building it out and deploying it? Can you just speak to overall where you fall, where the responsibilities are, and who all put it together?
Sure. So we usually start with a multidisciplinary team, and we start teasing it out from the beginning. And so a certain part of it's going to be technical discovery. When you're bringing forward a legacy database of that size, there was a full content audit on the structures and the how that actually needed to be restructured in order for it to work. But then the design team comes to the table to have the user experience conversations. At the end of the day, it's a B2B website. They're targeting engineers and they're trying to convert them. And so we usually go ahead and identify a full set of actual page points on the experience. It might be the home page, the about us page, the careers page. We might be doing products, services, resources, and then we'll do a set of types. And the reason why we do that is so that we can actually have user journey conversations. We're still going to go through a round of content outlining, wireframing, page design, and we're gonna come with a final page design. But what we'll do is we'll have 10, 15, 18 page designs, and then we'll break them all back down into the kit. And so the custom blocks that you end up using end up going through a full redesign and refresh process so that you're breaking down your fully designed pages that you're trying to get to convert for you into kits that can be used through different parts of the experience. Okay.
Thank you so much.